actually a transcription of a conversation with Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, and Dean Kamen speaking about like this particular equipment and what their thoughts were. And it's fascinating. It's less fascinating that it's about the Segway, because that's whatever. But when you hear a man who thinks like Steve Jobs and a man who thinks like Jeff Bezos being given this new technology and what their questions are, like, and Steve Jobs' question was, why haven't you taken this to a design firm? And he's like, because we design in-house. He goes, no, that's not the way to do it. Go to a third-party design house and have them look at your product and let them redesign it, because they will make stuff that will blow your mind away. You know, they'll take the technology and the science that you come up with, and they'll completely rethink it in a way that will blow people away. And that seems to have actually been what a lot of companies did. A lot of times people go, oh, that was the company that made it. And it was like, no, there was actually a smaller group. There's a husband-wife team who are the ones who made Electronic Battleship, who made the Merlin, who made a series of those games. It's all this husband and wife team, and they would have a suitcase with a prototype of whatever game they were going to show that had a copy of it, and they would show up and open up the suitcase and show, okay, well, the lights will do this and the lights will do that, and this is how it'll work, and then they would sell the design to whatever game company wanted them that day. I highly recommend a book called Electronic Plastic, which is essentially a wonderful overview of all these little handheld plastic games, and that guy is scary. He actually had like 1,000 of them, and they're all cataloged and all of what they did. And there's a book that's out right now. Slashdot is pimping it for some reason, called Digital Retro, which is basically it's basically 8-bit porn. Every computer you could imagine from the 8-bit era, lovingly portrayed in various angles, and all of its beautiful curves looked upon like a wonderful car or astounding airplane with nice soft lighting and, airbrushed ports. So that's one that's out there. Any other questions, by the way? I apologize for the speaker, who I don't know, because he's been replaced by somebody who doesn't know his subject. Although I know an awful lot about Coleco and the Connecticut Leather Company story, simply because it's fascinating to me when you trace these companies back. Does everyone here know how old Nintendo is? Anyone know when Nintendo was founded? 1898? Making playing cards for an old game? Nintendo, in the Japanese characters, Nintendo stands for it's leave luck to heaven. And so they were in games so when it's like, oh, Atari, oh, this thing, it's like a Nintendo. They're 100 goddamn years old. 106, 7 years old. That's, I wouldn't be too worried about whether or not the Nintendo revolution is going to, dominate or whatever. It's like they've been around for 107 years. I think they'll think for the long term. This is why when people go, oh, it's delayed for 2 years, it's like, that's a blink in the eye for Nintendo. I don't really think how long term these guys are. I mean, occasionally, like every other company, they bet the farm on something. Sony does this all the time. Every time Sony comes out with a new thing, like Sony sunk it all into the PlayStation. They totally pulled their chips and pushed them into the middle of the table, because if they had failed in execution on the PlayStation, they would have probably had to have gone into some sort of controlled bankruptcy for a while in some parts of their area, because they threw everything into all of their manufacturing, and it was an amazing loss leader for that company at the time. Nothing to what like Nintendo has done, or Microsoft did. But Microsoft has money to burn, right? They're capital rich. They can do it. Not everyone can do that. All right. I guess. Any other questions about this wide range of fascinating subjects? Okay. Well, anyway, look, thank you for your time for sitting through this, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the con. Like I said, I'm hopefully showing my film tonight on Bulletin Board Systems, and my site is called bbsdocumentary.com if you want to browse that site and go, wow, so that's the asshole I had to listen to for an hour instead of the Coleco Atom guy. I highly recommend vintage.org. if nothing else comes from you, vintage.org will put you in touch with the beginnings of every other retro community that's out there and where they're meeting. And it can sometimes surprise you where some of these meetings are being held and what's going on there. And you might find that all over the country that there's something going on that's of this kind of interest. And a lot of those people tend to be very much into what they do, and they tend to have some really fascinating stories of their own to tell. All right, I guess that's it. Let's go to your next whatever. And remember the keynotes at 1 o'clock. That should be fascinating. All right, thank you.